They're the nicest people in the world. But it's, you know, you can't blame somebody, and you can't blame a race
Well, of
for
course
the
not.
damnation of the world. You can't do that. It's the people that are the ones that are doing it. It's not a religion. It's not.
Well, Professor Bauer, what have you to make of this and to make of what I just read, which I've just received?
Well, Mr. Liddy, I think this is a very interesting fact that you read, because it shows quite clearly that Nazis are around. They are alive and well. The kind of governmental institution that we all stand for are being attacked by these people. They say it quite clearly, don't they?
Yes, they make no bones about it.
They make no bones about it. At least they are in the open, so they can be fought. I mean, that kind of idiotic nonsense, you know, is better out than secret.
Well,
and the fact that you read this out to your listeners, I think, is very useful, because they know then who these people are and how they should be dealt with.
Well, I wanted to make that point, and because, you know, sometimes, see, I have been to Yad Vashem in Israel, the Holocaust Museum there, and we have one recently built here in the United States, and a lot of people said, well, why have one here? I can understand having one in Israel for obvious historical reasons, but why have one here? I'll tell you why I have one here. Facts like this is why I have one here.
Precisely. And to answer your caller from California, I think that one has to see it in the proper proportion. These half-illiterate Nazis, like the ones that sent you the facts, are really sort of right on the lunatic fringe. And they show what people are capable of. One has to remember that it is still a lunatic fringe. Now, lunatic fringes can become the center. And Hitler started off in 1919 with 7 people, and 14 years later he was in power. So one should not count out the lunatic fringes. But what we face today, not only Jews, but anyone, in fact, are dangers of a new kind. And the denial of the Holocaust, because your facts doesn't deny the Holocaust, it justifies it.
Yeah.
So
the
denial, I mean, it's clear. These, you know, the Germans were right. Okay. So if the Germans were right, then we should establish a Hitler regime in the United States.
No, thank you, sir.
Yeah, exactly. So they are out in the open. I must repeat this. My fear is of various situations, like, for instance, the takeover of a country like Russia by extreme Russian nationalists, who could again target some population as enemies. The takeover of other countries by fundamentalists of one kind or another, who could do the same thing for minorities and other groups in their countries. So your caller is absolutely right. I think we ought to be fully aware and very vigilant.
All right. Well, Professor Bauer, we have to break again. You have been most generous with your time. You've stayed a considerable extra period of time. I think you have summed it up very, very well, and I want to thank you. And I want to remind all of you that this is a tremendously important subject, and if you would educate yourselves about it, I urge you to buy and read carefully, and be sure that the other people in your family and your children read the book Jews for Sale, Yale University Press, by Professor Yehuda Bauer. Thank you, Professor. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Liddy.
The G. Gordon Liddy Show, Radio Free D.
And let's see what we have here. We have this fax in. Dear Mr. Liddy, thank you for having Dr. Bauer on your show. It brings back fond memories of your show before it was syndicated. That is, before the zippy, commercialized radio stuff was added to make it more entertaining. Good work. This is signed by Craig Deering from Alexandria, Virginia, who says that he was a listener from the start. Well, John, if there's any zippy, commercialized, entertaining radio guy stuff in this program, I want a memo as to exactly what it is on my desk tomorrow morning. It will be eliminated. And if that means I got to eliminate you, Out you go, you zippy, commercialized, entertaining son of a gun. And you can take Cameron with you. I don't want anything zippy or commercialized or entertaining on this show. Do you understand that?
Got it.
Okay. Apparently, it's been ruined. All right. We have on the telephone now an old friend. She is the contributor to a regular column in the Liddy letter, my newsletter, on the subject of health. She's been a caller in many times on the subject of health and science in general, and in particular, she has been a guest on the program and will be again on the subject of nutritional supplements, vitamins, etc. And here is our old friend, Dr. C. Lee Broadhurst. Lee, are you there?
Hi, Gordon.
Hi, Lee. First of all, how's your brand new baby?
He's absolutely fine.
Well, that's wonderful.
It's right here in my lap.
Okay. Well, I know he's a remarkable young man. He's how old now?
He'll be 3 months old on December 7th.
3 months old, all right. Well, but we might ask some of these questions of him. Maybe we'll have him join in. Let's see. I have been, in the review and comment on the news, I read an article in the New York Times by Natalie Angier, and it's in many other papers, about the discovery of a mouse gene. We're making a big assumption here that the same thing will work with humans, but a mouse gene that tells the body when satiety has occurred, that there's had been enough food, there's enough fat stored and so forth, and therefore it shuts off the appetite, and that it's been discovered that when there is a defect in that gene, the mouse grows fat. It is speculated that this will be found true of human beings, and that perhaps that there can be a cure for obesity in our future. And I wondered, as a scientist, if you had any comment on that.
Well, I can make a few comments because this is another situation where it will promote a knee-jerk reaction, such as coconut oil in the popcorn and oat bran and muffins and everything. We've been breeding obese genetic strains of mice for years. They're used in studies on obesity. You know, there's several strains of obese mice. And what this study is saying is that some of these mice have been shown to not produce a specific hormone that affects the satiety center. And that's fine, but probably in humans, no single gene controls this if it does at all. That's the biggest leap of logic. I know you're not a big fan of animal testing, and this is one of the places where you're clearly on the right side of the fence, because we're just much more complex than mice, and we probably aren't controlled by one gene. And also, it's very important to remember that we're talking about clinical obesity. We are not talking about somebody who's got a nagging 20 pounds that they always want to lose. We're talking about people who have been fat basically since infancy. The fat kid, everybody knows one. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you see families together where you see the children clearly look exactly like the parents, and they're all overweight. And also there's people who have just absolutely unbelievable appetites, and this is to the extent of abnormalcy, where they do have a hard time dieting because they can't cut down. They're eating 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 calories a day when they should be eating 2,000.
Now, I've read suggestions. I don't know that there's any empirical evidence that has been peer-reviewed that would substantiate it, but suggestions that if you take a child with the potential for normalcy, an infant, and just overfeed it right from the beginning and turn him into a fat baby, that you create fat cells that otherwise would not have been created, and that once a fat cell is created, it exists for the rest of that person's life.
I have heard that myself, but I have never read anything further on it than some beginning studies. I'm not so sure that, normally an infant, it's kind of difficult to overfeed them. They're much better at deciding children are much better at deciding when they're full than adults are. And this is another thing that I have to caution about the study. I think it's great because my general overall feeling is that the majority of our behavior is biologically controlled. For a long time, I've been very much a proponent that extreme antisocial criminal behavior had biochemical and heavy metal toxicity problems, and this is...
I'll give him a heavy metal toxicity problem right between the eyes.
This is being borne out today. We're finding this again and again and again as more and more prisoners' hair have been analyzed for heavy metals and such. But not to stray too much from the subject, there are some people clearly who have a problem. They've always had a genetic problem. It's easy to look at identical twins versus fraternal twins and see two identical twins turn out to be obese, whereas the fraternal twins, one will and one will not. But there's much that you have to do, such as the recent column in the newsletter, in improving nutrition. Another reason why fat cells signal they haven't had enough is just the essential fatty acid lack in the diet, which is it's the number one nutritional deficiency in the U.S., to be sure. And when you don't get these essential fatty acids, you have an extreme taste for fat, and you eat it and you eat it and you eat it because the body's hungering for something that it needs. And the way to... And another thing that you have to think about when you look at a study like this is why are so many Americans overweight, but so many people in other countries aren't? Because most of the world is not starving, contrary to what the media would tell you. Most people get enough food. And if this was just if obesity was a genetic problem alone, then across the board in most every non-extreme third world country, you would see obese people, and that's not the case. The Europeans, the Americans and the Germans are notorious for having a high proportion of their population overweight, and they eat the most meat by a long shot. Even highly civilized cultures such as the French, they do not have the obesity problems that we do in the U.S.
You know, when one looks at photographs and sees in the paper, or if you're just out on the street and what have you, the persons who are generally designated as being impoverished, the poor, they are the plumpest poor people I've ever seen in my life.
That is true. The more money you have in this country, the less body fat you have.
Yeah, why is that? I mean, is that because the people have more money because they're a function of their intellect and they're intelligent about what they put into their bodies? Is that it?
One of the best ways to stay fat, become fat, stay fat forever, is to eat a junk food diet, because it's so low in the nutrients that you need to eat a lot more calories in order to get your basic vitamins and minerals, and the body can't be fooled. It knows when it's lacking things, and a high sugar, high fat, high processed food diet is just so lacking in nutrients, and it tends to make you eat a lot. Like, I defy one way that I'd give everybody a test. If you go home, try to eat every single solitary thing that you can raw. I mean, obviously you're not going to be eating raw eggs and not too much raw meat. But I guarantee that if you sat down and ate as many raw apples as there were, you cannot eat 6 raw apples, but you sure can down a glass of apple juice in a hurry, and you can even eat a bunch of applesauce. But eating 6 raw apples takes a while, and I guarantee that no matter what the calorie count says, you will not gain weight from eating the 6 apples or 6 bananas. But you bake them and you cook them up and you make a pie or you do whatever, you even just cook them or process them. The calories are entirely different. And nobody even quite knows why yet, but it has to do with the fact that the food that's raw has the enzymes in it. The enzymes that are naturally present in the food are there to help you digest it and utilize it properly.
Well, when I'm home, I'll eat sections of orange. I leave the skin on. I mean, I eat the orange skin and everything with it.
That's something that not everybody can do, but that's tremendously good for you, because one of the what you see when I call for something like the vitamin C with bioflavonoids, a lot of those bioflavonoids come from the inner pith of the orange peel. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them come from things such as grape skin too. That's how this idea that red wine is good for the heart came about. and it has to do with a large number of the bioflavonoids and other related compounds that come in the skin of the dark red grapes.
Let's see. Well, you have been
now,
advising us.
You have a specific question about this study.
Well, the study is an early one, and I mean they're very careful to say that it is an early study, that they have to see what it will, if it can be replicated in humans and so on. But the idea, the thrust is, quote, another possibility is testing for a genetic predisposition early in life, when modifying the diet would mitigate the effects of the gene.
Well, that's very important, because you have to think that if you have a genetic propensity for obesity, it is not a license to just give up and eat whatever you want. It's a license to be extremely careful and to educate yourself about nutrition and to exercise and do the best you can, because you're not, a treatment may never come in this way. If it's going to come, believe me, it is going to come in a lot less than 10 years, because this is a very lucrative business. But there's also a situation with chronic obesity. It's very, very often linked to food allergies. Very often. In some of the columns that I've written, I've described this a little bit, and if necessary, I can describe it a little more. And it's a situation like it is with cigarettes, where you end up eating something all the time, not because it tastes so good, but because it's so awful when you don't.
I see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nobody really likes to smoke. They just hate what it's like when they stop.
Yeah. Well, you think you got the same thing with food? The hunger pangs?
Absolutely true. And there's many, many people who have been obese for years, and when they finally got themselves to somebody who was a specialist in the food allergies, it gave them the specific tests. They run tests for 100 to 200 different foods. They found these things, they clean their diet up, and all of a sudden these people start dropping weight like they never have before. All kinds of problems such as eczema, colitis, just dandruff. Unbelievable number of conditions clear up too, because these people have been eating a food they've been allergic to for years and years, and the body's under assault every single day. And of course the number one is absolutely dairy products.
Why is that? Is it because, as some people say, the human body is perfectly suited to receive human milk, but not the milk of a cow?
Well, infants are perfectly suited to receive human milk, but not even, and young children, but not even adults. Since when do adults crave breast milk? This is not natural.
Yeah, well, that's true.
They may under certain circumstances, but not on a daily basis. But the cow produces a highly complex protein for the nourishment of its calf, which is even growing faster than a baby human. And it's just, it's a remarkable genetic engineering job, but it's just not the job for us.
Well, I know that there's some people who are lactose intolerant, but what about those of us who don't have a problem with lactose intolerant?
Well, some people are lactose intolerant, and that means that, again, they're lacking an enzyme to help them digest the sugar in milk, lactase, and that can be dealt with relatively easily. But many, 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 many people, and even from infancy to adult old age, are allergic to the proteins in milk, just like they're allergic to the proteins in pollen or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, if one is not, in other words, if one is not lactose intolerant and this, that, and the other thing, and has always been able to drink milk with impunity, is it a bad thing to do, to ingest milk?
No, I don't think it's bad, but I would not make it. I do not like to see dairy products as a mainstay of the diet. I mean, it's one of the only time that you ever see an obese vegetarian, they say, well, I eat cheese, and that's why.
Gotcha.
They remove all the meat from their diet and replace it with cheese, and in some cases they dramatically increase their fat intake.
Yeah, well, they probably dramatically increase their constipation too if they do that.
Yes.
Oh my!
But I'm saying that there are people who just they crave the dairy products, and many people know somebody whose weakness is rich ice cream. Mm-hmm. And they, if they buy some and have it in the house, they might as well kiss the whole carton goodbye. It's gone. It's impossible for them to have a serving as a dessert. If it's in the house, it's going to be gone. And these people, very ironically, turn out to be allergic to dairy products.
Oh, boy. Well, I tell you...
Okay, I think that's probably winds it up.
Yeah, and you have performed a fine service for us yet again, Lee. We thank you very, very much, and we're looking forward in the not-too-distant future to having you as a guest in the studio and really get into this whole business of vitamin and nutritional supplementation.
Yeah, I think that a column not this past couple months ago was about losing body fat, and I gave some suggestions, and I did say with the caveat there, if you have chronic obesity, you might need help beyond this point.
Yeah. Well, it's always, I think, a good idea if you're going to start changing your habits radically in terms of diet or this, that, and the other thing, or even vigorous exercise. It's probably good to get a checkup from your physician and make sure that it's safe to do so. Would you agree?
Not necessarily. It depends on if you're talking about somebody that's going from, who is quite. If you don't have any problems, any medical conditions, or you're on overweight, nothing's going to stop you from starting up. But if you do have medical conditions, and you are somebody who is quite overweight, or somebody who has never exercised, you might want to do that. But I don't encourage anybody to go to the doctor unnecessarily. You can always do something for a week and see how you feel, and if you really are uncomfortable with it, then by all means get it checked out.
Okay, Lee. Well, we thank you very much for those kind words, and we'll return you now to your maternal duties. And speaking of constipation, ladies and gentlemen, coming up, crass commercial messages, and we'll be right back. Thank you, Lee. All right, let's go to the telephones. First up from Dallas, Texas, is Teddy. Teddy, you're on the G. Gordon Liddy Show.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Liddy, for taking my call.
You're welcome,
I wanted
sir.
to take issue with you concerning your misuse of terminology as reference to the correctional facilities of our countries. Now, it may have been applicable since at the time that you were involved in the system, but now it is the term that you are using, such as prisoners and inmates and criminals. These are just not valid anymore.
Well, I don't use inmates. I never call anybody an inmate.
Excuse me?
I don't call people inmates.
You use prisoners, I believe.
Well, yes, I certainly do.
Well, a report issued by Amnesty International and approved by the ACLU.
Well, that certainly means it is right.
Well, it is right. Let me explain. What the deal is here, first of all, the key word we're looking at is correctional, okay? These are correctional facilities. We are correctional officers. We are not prison guards. We're not jailers or wardens. And you have certainly used those terminology referring to these.
No, I certainly have.
What we're trying to do is rehabilitate. We have been entrusted for the safety of these individuals and to make their life as comfortable as possible. We cannot interject these negative terms for these correction tenants and trustees is what they are.
Let me see now. What is that they are? Correction tenants?
Tenants is what we're. This is by Amnesty International and trustees.
And trustees. Well, I've heard about trustees. I mean, the trustees has a long use in prison. That's a prisoner who is entrusted usually with the custody of other prisoners on chain gangs and things like that.
These are the most acceptable terms now. Now, how long has it been since you have been involved with the correctional facilities of our country?
Well, I never was. Although I was in one or two prisons which were called federal correctional institutions. And that, let's see, the last time I was in any prison was in September of 1977.
Term I disagree with as well.
What's that?
Prison.
Oh, you don't think there's such a thing?
Not at all. It's a negative-sounding term.
Oh, heavens.
Another thing is these rumors.
Well, what about murder?
Well,
isn't that kind of negative-sounding? Well, what do we call murder now?
But let me. I want to speak to these rumors of corruption that you're always claiming. I have never seen any evidence of this, and this is.
You know, I've never had a prison guard come on here yet who hasn't said, "Well, I never saw anything like that." I never saw it. Well, of course you never saw it. I mean, because if you admitted that you had seen it...
Well, first of all, you haven't had prison guards on there. You have had correctional officers.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
But
Okay,
I think
go ahead.
it's unfortunate that you continue to somehow impugn the system with these false terminologies, which may have been applicable 20 years ago. See, you're, what, 70 years old or pushing it pretty close to it?
No, unfortunately, for your argument, I'm not there yet. I'm 64.
Well, you're somewhat elderly, okay. Let's put it that way. You're not up to date. I wish you would read this report issued by Amnesty International. Are you familiar with them?
I have heard of Amnesty International, and I have certainly heard of the American Civil Liberties Union.
And this has been approved by the ACLU.
I see. And you believe that's to be significant, do you?
I certainly do.
All right. Well, do you have a dictionary by any chance?
Yes, I have a dictionary.
Well, I've got in front of me the concise Oxford Dictionary of the English Language. Now, what I'm going to do...
Now, I don't want to get on technical...
Oh, we don't want to be technical? You do understand, don't you, that we will find the word prison and prisoner in a dictionary of the English language.
Well, yes.
And we will not find correctional facility. You do understand that, don't you?
Well, you know, at a correctional facility, you know that these terms that you're applying, the prison and these such terms, are negative to what we're trying to accomplish.
Well, they're certainly negative. Of course they're negative. I mean, who in his right mind wants to go into a prison?
When you rehabilitate an individual, you're going to have to come from a viewpoint that these people are capable of being rehabilitated.
How long? Wait a minute. First of all, how long have you been in the business?
Using such nonsense terminology as that, you're not going to get anywhere.
How long have you been in the business, sir?
1 year, 4 months.
I see. Okay. How many people have you corrected?
I would say about 24.
All right. Now, how do you know them to be corrected, sir?
Since they've been on parole, they have not committed any crimes, and they are faithful to reporting to their parole officers.
Okay. And you believe, therefore, that you do understand that they are still in custody and control if they're on parole, don't you? I mean, they're still being monitored and so forth.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any of your former charges who are not on parole, who are out free?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you believe them to be rehabilitated and corrected, is that correct?
Right. I have not sent them back in the system.
Okay.
And
that means they haven't been caught
yet.
Them
committing crimes further.
How do you know they haven't committed any crime?
Well, their names would have been in the paper, it would have been on the news, and they would have been arrested by the police.
Has it?
If that were the case.
I see. In other words, you are firmly of the belief.
Trying to bait me.
Sir, you're firmly of the belief that if anybody commits a crime, they will be detected.
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth. What I'm focusing here is the terminology that you continue to use, and this is the general gist of my call, in reference to our correctional system. Okay. Mm-hmm. You want to apply terminology. And you even brought up the word murder, and I think that was most inappropriate. But, prisoners, criminals, we have to get away from this. We are in the business of rehabilitating and trying to get these people back in the mainstream.
Well, do some of these potential mainstreamers commit murder?
Well, of course.
Now, when they are convicted in a court of law, we still convict people in courts of law, do we not?
Yes, we do.
All right. Are they sentenced to a period of imprisonment?
I don't understand the question.
Well, let me put it this way. If you look at the penal law, I
don't like that term.
You don't like the term penal law?
No, imprisonment.
Well, you may not like it, but do we not have in the penal law certain punishments for crime?
Okay.
Do we not have that?
Yes, we have that.
All right. And sometimes people are fined, aren't they?
Of course.
Okay. And sometimes people are, quote, sentenced to periods of imprisonment as designated in years. Isn't that true? They don't sentence people to...
I don't like the...
Well, wait a minute. Aside from what you like or don't like, is it not a fact that the penal laws of the state do not sentence people to periods of correction? They sentence people to periods of imprisonment. Now, what do you call someone who is imprisoned?
I would call that person, just like I told you previously, a correction tenant. That's what I would call that
Correction
individual.
tenant.
I would
see.
not use the term in prison because it has a negative effect.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you really believe that someone who is in a prison and is in prison, he cannot leave, that person somehow or other is of the opinion that he can leave, that he's not imprisoned, if you call him a correctional tenant? Do you think that? Do you think people are that stupid?
What you're getting at.
I see. All right. Let me ask you this. What do you do there?
My job is I'm responsible for the safety of the tenants.
I see.
My job is to feed them, clothe them, and be escorts and such.
What about if one of them wants to leave?
Well, they can't as long as there's a correctional officer with them, escorting, of course.
Well, suppose one of them decides, it's a nice day. I think I'll leave. And I don't think I particularly want another person with me. I want to go and do something by myself.
Well, that would be considered a breakout, and he would be in violation of the law. We would have no other choice but to apprehend that individual.
I see. So you are guarding them, aren't you?
No.
You're not guarding them?
No.
I see.
Again,
now,
you're using
breaking out of
terminology.
what? Breaking out of what? How do you break out of a non-prison? I don't break out of my home every day when I go to work. I leave. And that's because my home is not a prison.
I'm having here is the terminology you keep using.
I keep using the English language, which has not been repealed yet by Congress.
I understand that, but you understand it does have negative connotations.
Well, yes, negative things have negative connotations. Does not the term murderer have a negative connotation?
We're not going to agree here, sir.
I think you're absolutely right.
I think I'm right, too. You're wrong. But I appreciate you taking my call.
Yes, indeed, sir. You have. But you haven't given me the best laugh I've had all day, and I appreciate your having called. Thank you very much. More of your calls on faxes and letters. Agree or disagree. Coming up. Oh, God. Give us some commercials.
This is the G. Gordon Liddy Show.
And this fax is just in from Susan Johnston from Columbus, Ohio. And she says, oh, my, everything that you said about stupid prison guards is true. We all just heard it for ourselves. Susan Johnston. Yes, well, actually, that poor fellow was well behind. Not only do we not call them prisoners anymore, we don't call them correctional tenants anymore either. We call them the freedomly challenged. Oh, my. Also, the man who called you elderly is talking out of his hat. You are indeed virile, vigorous, and potent. And boy, can you kiss. Yours in lust. And this is signed, Dana the Daydreamer. Oh, yes. Remember her well. Yes, indeed. Boy, can she kiss back. He says, good for you, G-Man, for putting that bleeding heart prison guard in his place. I laud your command of the English language. Keep up the good work. Best wishes. And let's see. I guess more on the same thing. Here's one. Dear G. Gordon, this is from Bob Richardson from Lake Ridge, Virginia. Don't be too hard on gentlemen like the one who called and objected to your use of language in connection with prisons, prisoners, and the like. We need an occasional encounter with mush-headed liberals like these to remind us just how far our society has departed from rational values. Sincerely yours, Bob Richardson. Now, Bob, you don't want to be that hard on liberals. I mean, yes, liberals don't really have it together. But prison guards, sir, are stupid. Oh, let's see. You're on the G. Gordon Liddy Show, sir.
Good day, G-Man.
How are you, sir?
Oh, vigorous and potent, just like you.
Very good. Nobody's that virile, vigorous, and potent, but that's all right. Okay, how may I serve you today?
Okay, my question involves around Vince Foster's death.
Yes.
You said that he had semen in his shorts?
Yes, that's correct. And blonde hair, not his, on the interior of his clothing, and on the exterior, carpet fibers.
Okay. Okay, how can I say this? Say, for instance, a man was shot. say like around Jacksonville or Washington D.C. or somewhere around the other parts of the country.
Okay.
If he was like shot in the head, just like Vince Foster was, would semen in the shorts be visible or?
Okay, I understand what you're getting at. Now, here's what you have to remember.
Okay.
Sometimes, when someone dies violently, it relaxes the sphincter muscles.
Okay.
And in that instance, there could be a release of semen, because of the muscle relaxant.
Okay.
However, were that the case, it would relax all the sphincter muscles. It does not relax them selectively. So you either have all of them relaxed, in which case you would not only have semen, but you'd also have feces and urine.
Okay.
Or you would have no relaxation of those muscles, and you would find none of those things. The fact that only semen was found means that it was not from that reason. It was most likely because he had sexual relations.
Yeah, I was somewhat thinking about that. I've been thinking about this since April when you first said it, or somewhere on that line.
Yes.
When he first died. Yeah, I like you were saying, you're probably suspecting foul play.
Yeah, well, the inference, and he also had a full meal.
Right.
And of course, this business of he was depressed and killed himself is nonsense. People who are depressed and intend to kill themselves don't go out and first get a nice big hearty meal, then go get laid, and then shoot themselves. And certainly they don't leave suicide notes behind, which do not even mention their wife and family. I mean, that's just nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Mr. Foster. He may have committed suicide, and there may have been a genuine suicide note somewhere which somebody has made off with. Probably if they did, it was at the same time they picked up his body and took it to Fort Marcy Park, because I don't know what happened to him, but I sure know it didn't happen there in Fort Marcy Park.
The way you was talking, I'm not convinced he died in Fort Marcy Park. He died somewhere else, like in a motel room or.
Could well be. But there you've got the evidence of carpet fibers in the exterior. That would mean one of two things: either his body was wrapped in a carpet, let's say for transportation purposes, or maybe he had sex on a carpet. However, usually persons who are as high up on the pecking order as the deputy White House counsel, they usually are managed to find a bed to have sex on. It's only those of us who are terribly perverted individuals who would actually have sex, say, on the rug in the kitchen.
Yeah, someone.
Only awful people do things like that.
Someone that's real desperate.
No, not desperate, just perverted. Just a really miserable person. Someone who'll do it anywhere, under any circumstances.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good. Also, like to let you know, I'm also a NRA member and have a .22 semi-automatic rifle.
Very good, sir.
Anybody that wants it, going to have to come and fight for it.
There you go. What's the magazine capacity of your semi-automatic rifle?
11 rounds.
There you go. Good. It's over 10. Hang on to it. The hell with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Down with them.
There you go. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate your call, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. All right. Let's see. Coming up next is Marvin. Marvin?
Yes.
Yes, sir. It doesn't say on the screen where you're from. Maybe you don't want to say where you're from.
I prefer not at the moment.
Okay, that's fair.
But I have been a deputy sheriff for 14 years, and as such, I work in this guy would, I don't know what term is, we call it a detention center. You and I would call it a jail.
That's right.
That guy was he a guard or a detention officer, or what did he?
Well, he called himself a corrections officer, but you and I would call him a guard.
I would call him a fool, but you can call him a guard.
All right.
They would eat, if he came out to our place, they would eat him alive in about 3 minutes.
I know.
Spit out the button.
There you go. That's right.
Gordon?
Yes, sir.
You're a humorous, funny guy, and I enjoy listening to you. Are you really honest? Was that guy really, or did you just...
No, I didn't make him up. No. That is not some employee of this station that we put up to that. Honest to God, that was a genuine call. I know.
I wanted to cry.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
We have these people that want to be bad, and that's why they're bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're evil people.
And they'll be bad until they change their mind.
That's right. And nobody's going to rehabilitate. Occasionally, this is what Marvin, this is what I've said to people, and I think it's true. You tell me. Occasionally, you'll find a prisoner, in a joint somewhere. He's been there a long time, and he'll sit down with a pen and paper, and he'll add up all his scores. That means all the money he's stolen, right, over his lifetime. And then he'll put down all the years he spent in prison, and usually they're in and they're out, and they're in and they're out. And he'll add it all up, and then he'll draw an average, and he'll say, wow, being a crook, I'm earning an average of $4,332.67 a year. I better turn in my gun for a lunch pail because I sure don't have it in me to be a good crook. I can't make it as a crook. Then sometimes those people will go do something else. But that's about the only time. I mean, when I was and I've been in 9 different prisons, that includes several jails.
And I read your book.
Yeah, and believe me, these guys, when they're in there, they're all in there because they did it. They did it. They know they did it, and you know they did it, and everybody else knows they did it. And what they when you go around trying to rehabilitate them, you just annoy them like flies on a buffalo. What they want to do is sit down with their peers. Now, if he's a bank robber, he's going to sit down with the other bank robbers. If he's a burglar, he's going to sit down with the other burglars. And they're going to go over over this piece of work that he got caught on because he knows it was his fault that he got caught. He's not angry at the deputy sheriff or the police officer who caught him because he knows he had every advantage. He chose the time. He chose the place. He chose the method. And if the plan failed, hell, it was his plan. So he's not angry at the police officer. He's angry with himself. So he talks to his friends to figure out how, as soon as he gets out, he can do exactly the same thing again, and this time not get caught. Am I right or am I wrong?
That's absolutely right. Now, let me explain to you what our duties are.
Okay.
Our duties primarily are to keep those people there.
That's right. You've got us
from killing each other or us.
That's you got it right. You've got so many warm bodies when you begin your shift. Yeah. And you better have that many when you end your shift, or you're not going to be a deputy very much longer. Am I right?
That's right. And there are some people, really, that shouldn't be there. Unfortunately, they all claim they're innocent, but there are some that there's no reason for them to be there.
Yeah, there are some, I call them some of them the poor soul types, but there are some. Mm-hmm. But they're precious few, aren't they?
Very. Yeah. It's hard to say. It doesn't show on their forehead anymore.
That's right.
X, right. Y, or Z.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen, I've enjoyed listening to you for a long time, Gordon.
Thank you, Marvin.
And I hope the ATF doesn't come after you for some fancy flight.
I hope they don't, too, because there are going to be a lot fewer ATF. No, if they come, if they come the way law enforcement officers should, if they come knock on my door and say, sir, we're Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, we have a search warrant, here it is. Mm-hmm. Hand it to me. I'm just going to stand aside and let them search. If they threaten me with deadly force and start slamming my wife around, oh boy, just forget about it.
Listen, in 14 years, I've never even had to take my pistol out of my holster to threaten anybody.
Well, yeah. Well, see,
I've used a 45 caliber finger to point at them.
Yeah, that's right. But you see, here's the thing. You understand how to be a law enforcement officer. These guys don't. They're a bunch of thugs and bums that make war on innocent women and children, stomp their pet cats to death and things like that. You guys don't do that, and I know it. You know it. And that's the problem. They ought to, you get a bad bunch like that, they ought to dissolve it so that they don't spoil the reputation of a lot of good people who are not connected with them.
Amen.
All right, sir.
Listen, keep up the good work. I'm really thrilled to be able to get through to you. It only took 30 minutes of dialing, but it was worth it.
Well, thank you very much, Marvin, and I'm delighted that you did, because I've really enjoyed our conversation, sir.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. God bless you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about out of time. Let's see. Let's read this fact from Steve Jackson. He says, subject earlier caller, dear sir, the caller who was trying to express his displeasure with your terminology for prisons and prisoners, was he for real? Surely you put him up to that. No, I swear, just like I told Marvin, I didn't do that. He says, when I was in junior high school, one of the things I remember, or at least I like to think I remember, was that if you are convicted of a crime, you give up your rights as a citizen of the United States. That's true. Where is this country going wrong? The courts are jammed as it is, and we have prisoners filing lawsuits over things like the food isn't to their liking. Has the pendulum that swings between ultra-right and ultra-left finally reached the maximum left-hand limit? I doubt it. If these prison guards think that they are there to protect and service the correctional tenants, then this, as this guy put it, then isn't someone in a hell of a lot of trouble because they failed to protect Jeff Dahmer? Good point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's G. Gordon Liddy Show. See you tomorrow.
Westwood One Radio Networks.